I've always been drawn to Las Vegas, the neon glow, the relentless energy, the promise of big opportunities. This trip, however, wasn't for pleasure. I was here on business. With a tight budget and little choice, I booked a cheap Airbnb on the outskirts, a place that promised a quick, affordable stay so I could focus on work. But nothing could have prepared me for the nightmare that awaited me that night. The house appeared to be an economical, if unremarkable, shelter from the harsh desert heat. But the moment I crossed its threshold, an inexplicable sense of foreboding washed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into a place with secrets too dark to comprehend. After a long drive and a taxing day of work, I was ready to rest. Instead of immediately unpacking, I decided to allow myself a brief reprieve, a 10-minute nap to clear my head. I told myself it was just exhaustion and that a short rest would help me settle in. I drifted into a light sleep, convinced that when I woke any uneasy feelings would simply be a residue of travel fatigue. But as I awoke, I couldn't shake a lingering uncertainty, an odd nagging sensation that perhaps even my nap had been touched by something unexplainable. I chalked it up to my tired mind playing tricks on me. Little did I know that the true horror was yet to come. As midnight approached, the atmosphere changed. The gentle glow of the lamp waned, replaced by an eerie half-light that made every shadow seem alive. I began to notice sounds, subtle creaks, distant whispers, that I couldn't explain. The house, once a safe haven, now felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I felt a prickling at the back of my neck, as if unseen eyes were watching me. The line between reality and nightmare was beginning to blur. Then I heard it, a sound that seemed to come from the very bowels of the house. The basement door, usually locked tight, creaked open as if beckoning me. A deep, almost inhuman whisper slithered out from the darkness, reciting words in a language I couldn't understand. I froze. My mind screamed to run, but a twisted curiosity held me in place. I felt compelled to know what lay beneath. With each hesitant step, the air grew colder, and the voices, now more insistent, seemed to echo off the walls. I knew then that this was no ordinary house. It was a vessel for something dark and ancient. Down in that oppressive darkness, I discovered signs of a forgotten horror. Symbols, cryptic, jagged, marred the concrete floor and walls. The scent of decay and something bitter, like burnt incense mixed with old regret, overwhelmed me. In that moment I realized that this basement held the remnants of a terrible secret, a curse born of agony and betrayal. I almost couldn't breathe as I watched a ghostly figure flicker before my eyes, a vision of sorrow and eternal torment. The journal I later found on a rickety table would tell me the truth. Decades ago, a tragic love ended in betrayal and murder, and in her final moments, she cursed the house. That curse, I now knew, had been waiting for me. As I fled back to the upper floors, the house seemed to come alive. The boundaries between the living and the dead blurred. Every creak and whisper was a reminder of the curse now unleashed. I could feel the malevolent force tightening its grip on the very structure, determined to keep me trapped within its labyrinth of terror. I ran through hallways that seemed to shift and change, as if the house itself was rearranging its rooms to trap me. The whispers grew into anguished cries, and every step I took was matched by the pounding of my heart. I knew I had to escape, but every exit was blocked by the relentless force of that ancient curse. In a final, desperate bid for survival, I pushed through the confusion. I tried every door, every window, but the house twisted around me like a living maze. With each failed attempt, the ghostly laughter and mournful wails of unseen souls drove me to the brink of madness. I felt the curse's presence all around me, a suffocating weight that whispered, "You belong to us." For a moment I was paralyzed by terror, truly convinced that I would never escape this prison of shadows. Every instinct screamed at me to run, yet I felt rooted in place, caught in the grip of something that had transcended time. At long last, the first light of dawn crept in, revealing the true extent of the horror I'd endured. I emerged from that cursed dwelling broken and trembling, a soul forever scarred by a night that defied explanation. That cheap Airbnb was no longer just a temporary stop for work. It had become a haunted vessel, stained by ancient sorrow and a malevolent curse. Even as the sun rose, the dread remained. The whispers, the shifting shadows, they persisted, a chilling reminder that some nightmares never truly fade. I awoke in a haze, not fully knowing where I was. Was it the aftermath of a nightmare, or had I truly escaped the clutches of that cursed house? The line between reality and a dream blurred in my mind, leaving me haunted by uncertainty. I remember vivid fragments, the whispering walls, the spectral figure, the relentless curse, yet, as I slowly came to, I wasn't sure if it was all real or merely a terrible hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear. I share my story not to seek pity but to warn you. In this modern age of digital bookings and fleeting escapes, even the most unremarkable Airbnb can hide a darkness beyond comprehension. Las Vegas, with its neon allure and promise of opportunity, can be a place where ancient curses and unspeakable terrors lie hidden behind unsuspecting doors. So, the next time you book an Airbnb, especially in a city as unpredictable as Las Vegas, ask yourself, could this cheap retreat be a gateway to something sinister? Stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember that sometimes the most terrifying nightmares are only a booking away. I remember it all too clearly. My wife and I had dreamed of a romantic escape, a honeymoon in Bangkok, promised as an authentic local retreat, booked through an Airbnb boasting both modern comforts and a touch of old-world charm. Yet from the moment we arrived, a deep sense of unease crept in. I stepped off the taxi into a muggy Bangkok night, the city alive with neon signs and the constant hum of street vendors. But as I turned down a narrow, unassuming alley to reach our temporary home, the vibrant pulse of Bangkok faded into a heavy silence. The building was ancient, its faded facade and overgrown courtyard suggesting that secrets lingered long after time had passed. Inside the apartment was an odd blend of modern amenities and relics from a bygone era. It was in this uneasy atmosphere that I first encountered Lek, a domestic helper assigned to keep the kitchen pristine and the rooms in order. At first glance, Lek was the epitome of efficient service. Her movements were measured, her uniform immaculate, an anachronism in a modern setting. Yet something about her unsettled me. There was a distant, sorrowful quality in her eyes, as though they held memories of a life far removed from the present. Every time I caught a glimpse of her in a reflective surface, a window or a polished countertop, her figure blurred at the edges, wavering between worlds. I dismissed my growing discomfort as mere nerves in an unfamiliar place, but as the days passed, that nagging feeling deepened. I began to wonder if there was more to Lek than met the eye. One sleepless night, when the humid darkness pressed against the thin apartment walls, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. At first I assumed it was a stray notification. Then came a series of cryptic texts from an unknown number, messages that chilled me to the bone. In service she labors beyond the veil of time. Remember 1973. Her duty never ended, she lingers still. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Attached to the first message was an old sepia-toned photo, a woman in the same uniform as Lek, her face etched with grief and a haunting emptiness. The date stamped in the corner read 1973. My heart pounded as I realized that the kindly helper I'd observed might be a remnant of a past long forgotten, a ghost bound by duty. In the nights that followed, more messages arrived, snippets of a tragic tale hinting at an accident, betrayal, and a life extinguished in this very building. Each notification deepened the chill that seemed to seep into every corner of the apartment. I found myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see Lek appear in impossible places, a fleeting silhouette in the doorway of the kitchen, or reflected in a dark window, her eyes no longer warm but glowing with a spectral light. Unable to tolerate the mounting terror any longer, I decided to confront the mystery head-on. One fateful midnight, driven by desperation for answers, I followed the soft, measured footsteps echoing through the silent corridors. In the dim glow of the kitchen, I finally saw her, Lek standing as if she had always belonged there. For a long, breathless moment, I simply stared. Then, as if compelled by forces beyond my control, I heard her speak, a voice layered with the sorrow of ages past.
I was once entrusted with care in this home. In my final hours I was forsaken, my life taken without justice, my duty unfulfilled. I have lingered here, bound by a promise I could never break.
Those words shattered every notion of normalcy. In that heart-stopping moment I understood, Lek was not alive. She was the ghost of a woman trapped in eternal servitude, condemned to roam these halls by a tragedy that no one dared remember. The revelation was too much to bear. Panic surged through me as the spectral figure of Lek slowly dissolved into the shadows. I gathered what little courage I possessed and without a backward glance fled that oppressive apartment into the restless Bangkok night. Every step away felt like an escape from a past that clung desperately to the present, a past that, even now, whispers its sorrow in every silent corner of my mind. For weeks my wife and I tried to settle into our new life, convinced that we had finally left that cursed building behind. One crisp evening, we arrived at our new house, a modest home that we hoped would be a fresh start. Exhausted yet relieved, we unlocked the door and stepped into our living room, trying to shake off the lingering memories of our ordeal. No sooner had we begun to relax than my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting a routine notification. Instead, my blood ran cold as I read the message.
I am here always in service.
I froze, my heart hammered in my chest. The message was simple, yet its implications were impossible to ignore. It was as if Lek, the spectral helper we had left behind, had followed us, her duty unending, her presence now an inescapable part of our lives. I looked at my wife, whose eyes mirrored my terror. In that moment, I knew that our escape had been an illusion. The past had reached out to claim us, and Lek's ghost would now walk with us forever. I share this story not as a boast or a thrill-seeking confession, but as a dire warning. Sometimes the darkest horrors follow you home, and if you ever find yourself served by a kind face with sorrowful eyes, remember my tale, because that presence might never leave you, whispering its eternal promise, I am here always in service. I needed a break. Weeks of endless work at the office had drained me, and I was desperate to escape the monotony. That's why I booked the Mansion, a quiet weekend away from the city in a grand old estate I found on Airbnb. The photos promised vintage charm, secluded luxury, and a peaceful retreat from the chaos of modern life. The mansion stood at the end of a long, winding driveway, its silhouette stark against the twilight sky. As I stepped out of my car, a shiver ran down my spine. The door was slightly ajar, a low creak escaping its hinges as I pushed it open. The mansion's front door creaked shut behind me, the sound echoing through the silent house. The entry hall was vast and imposing, with a grand staircase sweeping up to the second floor. A pale light flickered on, revealing a room frozen in time. I continued my exploration, each room more unsettling than the last. The dining room was equally eerie, set for a feast that would never come. A half-finished game of chess sat on a table in the library. It felt as though the mansion itself was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to return. I found myself drawn back to the living room, compelled by the unsettling gaze of the man in the portrait. As I knelt down to arrange the logs, I felt a cold draft, like a phantom breath on the back of my neck. The man in the portrait seemed to stare down at me, a hint of amusement or perhaps malice in his eyes. And for the first time since arriving at the mansion, I felt a surge of fear, cold and sharp, grip my heart. Drawn by an unspoken invitation, I ventured deeper into the mansion's shadowy heart. I stumbled upon the library quite by accident, its entrance concealed behind a tapestry. The library was a sight to behold, a testament to a bygone era of scholarly pursuits. The faint glow of the setting sun filtered through the grime-coated glass, casting long, dancing shadows across the dusty floor. As I moved deeper into the library, my foot brushed against something solid hidden beneath a faded Persian rug. Curiosity piqued, I bent down and carefully lifted the edge of the rug, revealing a small iron ring set into the floorboards. With bated breath, I grasped the handle and pulled. The floorboards groaned in protest as a section of the bookshelf swung inwards, revealing a narrow, dark passageway beyond. The air within the hidden room was heavy with the scent of decay and the faint, cloying aroma of jasmine. A single flickering gas lamp illuminated a small, dusty table upon which lay a leather-bound diary. The diary belonged to a man named Richard, his elegant script a stark contrast to the unsettling content contained within its pages. Richard's descriptions mirrored my own experiences, confirming the chilling realization that I was not alone in this haunted mansion. As I delved deeper into Richard's diary, each page I turned seemed to amplify the mansion's oppressive atmosphere. Richard's words painted a vivid picture of his descent into madness. According to Richard's increasingly disjointed entries, the midnight guest appeared at the stroke of 12. Richard believed the tapping was the midnight guest's way of announcing its arrival, a prelude to a terrifying encounter. My hands trembled as I reached the final entry in Richard's diary. The entry was dated exactly 50 years to the day before my arrival. The mansion was not just haunted, it was a predator, luring unsuspecting victims into its web of despair. I had to get out of there, had to escape the mansion's clutches before it claimed me as its own. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white as I fought against the wave of nausea. And then, I heard it. A soft rhythmic tapping, echoing faintly from somewhere deep within the mansion's bowels. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, each tap like a hammer blow against my sanity. I had to get out of there, had to find a way to escape the mansion's clutches. Panic surged through me, hot and desperate. I fumbled blindly for the hidden door, my hands scraping against rough-hewn stone. My fingers finally found the iron ring cold and slick against my clammy skin. I pulled with all my might, but the door wouldn't budge. It was as if it was being held shut by an unseen force, a malevolent entity that relished my desperation. The tapping stopped abruptly, plunging the hidden room into an eerie silence that was somehow more terrifying than the sound that had preceded it. I held my breath, listening intently, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. And then, I saw it. A faint glow, emanating from the space beyond the hidden door, slowly illuminated a figure standing silently in the doorway. The figure was tall and skeletal, its form shrouded in a tattered black cloak that seemed to absorb the meager light. Its face was obscured by the shadows, but I could sense its gaze fixed upon me, cold and calculating like a predator sizing up its prey. I bolted as the skeletal figure advanced, its shadow stretching unnaturally long across the cold stone floor. My heart thundered in my ears as I tore away from the hidden passage, every instinct screaming to escape. The mansion seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of its own, its corridors twisting into a labyrinth of shifting darkness. I followed a narrow, winding stairwell I'd never noticed before, a desperate path illuminated only by the erratic flicker of a dying chandelier. Every step was a battle against the suffocating fear that the mansion was determined to keep me captive. The tapping had resumed somewhere behind me, a relentless metronome urging my flight, and I could hear a low, ragged whisper echoing through the halls. "You can't leave." But I dared not slow down. At last, I reached a heavy door that creaked open to a narrow, moonlit passage. With trembling hands I pushed through, finding myself on the overgrown grounds of the estate. The chill night air was a brutal contrast to the mansion's oppressive heat, and I ran blindly across the lawn as if the darkness itself were trying to reclaim me. Behind me the mansion loomed, its once inviting facade now a sinister maw of shadows. I didn't dare look back as I scrambled down the long, winding driveway, the rhythmic tapping fading into the distance with each desperate step. When I finally burst through the wrought iron gate, I paused, shivering in the early whispers of dawn. The terror of the night clung to me like a curse, yet I had escaped the mansion's clutches, its dark promise unfulfilled. Still, As the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, a chill lingered in my bones. I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, hidden in the gloom of that cursed estate, the tapping was only waiting for the next unwary soul to cross its threshold. If you're still here, you've been marked. The only way to stay safe? Stick with us. Subscribe before it's too late. And if you have a horror story of your own, something real, something you can't explain, tell us in the comments or send us an email. We're always watching.